What I want to show you is my method for domination, as you would call it. I'm going to show you examples where we don't even have a website and we have hundreds of phone calls coming in a month. And that's not something that took years to create. I mean, literally, we're creating businesses inside of a month by just flooding them with phone calls. In some cases, I'm getting ownership interest in the business. In other cases, I'm just selling the leads and profiting that way. So I want to show you, no matter where you're at, if this is something that's totally new to you, or if you're like a really established veteran, that you can go, sweet, I can take away something from this webinar. I get it. I apply this and I'm getting even better results, right? So I want this to be worth a lot for the time that we spend together. So let's do this. Let's first I'm going to open up some notes here of mine and just kind of walk you guys through some of these things. So first of all, basics of GMBs. I'm assuming most of you guys are pretty familiar with Google My Business Listings, or GMBs as we call them. If you're not, I'm not really going to go in depth on just GMBs and basics of GMBs, because there's a lot of places that you can find that information. I want to show you the things that you can't find elsewhere. All right. So the biggest thing that I want to kind of share with you guys is there was a massive shift. Okay. It's been probably a couple years now, but there's been a massive shift in how Google treats Google My Business Listings. Okay. So some of you may have seen this, you've heard of it, or maybe you even experienced it firsthand, but there was a shift in the algorithm. Now, I'm just a real practical guy. So like, if it works, I do it, right? Like, I don't know every little technical piece. Some of you probably are far more technical than I am, but I think it was the pigeon update that Google rolled out. It's maybe been a couple of years ago, but what they essentially did, you guys tell me if you remember this, put this in the chat if you remember this. You remember how, like, if you had a website, or you could see a website that was ranking, let's say like carpet cleaning Los Angeles, or Los Angeles carpet cleaning, you would see that business in the maps, like, no matter where you searched in Los Angeles. Like, if you were in the south part of Los Angeles, or if you were in the north part of Los Angeles, it would be the same guy or gal that would be ranking no matter what. Like, it didn't matter where you were at in LA or outside of LA, you'd see the same result there all the time. And Google made a shift to proximity. Do any of you remember when that happened? You guys remember seeing that? Let me see if I can see the chat here. Oh, I can. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, yeah. You guys definitely. You remember when this happened, right? This was really dramatic. Yeah, Rob's saying September 2016. That sounds about right. Yeah, it's been maybe a couple years or so. But this was dramatic. I mean, at the time, I wasn't doing a lot of GMB stuff like I am now, just primarily ranking clients' websites. They had maybe one or two GMBs, and not like it was today. But what's interesting is I was talking with a member of my group. His name is Aaron Lianza. He had a client that had a taxi business. I'm not going to say the city, but he had a client with a taxi business. Now, obviously, we got Uber and Lyft and other people kind of invading into that model. But at the time, they were getting a few thousand phone calls per week for this client, because a lot of people are just looking for a taxi. And I remember he messaged me and said, Matt, what just happened? Because all of a sudden, like overnight, they lost 90% of their phone calls. And I'm kind of like the last one to actually see a lot of these like algorithm updates, because I'm just kind of doing my thing. Like, stuff's working, making money. Like, I'm not, a lot of times you're not going to see me like, reading these different sites. I'm just kind of in the trenches, just doing my thing. But he messages me and was kind of freaking out, and rightfully so. And I had to look and see what was going on. And I figured out, wow, if you had, because he had the number 1 spot for this city for taxis for like, probably a year or more. And they were just, flying high, getting all these calls, and they got cut 90%. Can you imagine that? Losing 90% of your phone calls overnight? I mean, it just really, really was a problem. And so I don't know if he's still working with that client today, but I imagine they were pretty worked up once 90% of the phone calls were gone, right? So what we discovered kind of out of that shock and that crisis was, wait a second, Google has taken all the leads and all the rankings from just this top guy or this top gal that was ranking number 1 in the city, and has completely distributed this, right, across all the people in the market. And so like now, if I'm talking to a new client, or even you guys have probably seen this. If you're talking to a client, guess what? They will a lot of times tell you that the only phone calls that they're getting are the ones that are right in their backyard, right? They're just right in their backyard. They're not phone calls that are coming from all across the metro area. And so that's a common thing that people will ask me. They'll say, Matt, can you get me more phone calls across a metro, not just in, my little neck of the woods? And I'm going to show you the method here in a little bit as to how you do that, how you get a lot of calls coming in no matter where somebody's located at. But at the time, it was crisis because he lost 90% of these phone calls, and we discovered that really what they just did was they just dialed everything into like about a 5 to 10 mile radius. So if you were in Los Angeles, let's say, for taxis, guess what happened? You had businesses that started to benefit from that. People that never did SEO, people that didn't know even what a GMB was. They maybe just had one and started to get phone calls just because Google, if you're in a far part of town, Google's going to show those businesses that are located in that part of the town. And so it's been a big game changer. I still don't see a lot of people talking about this. And it is the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to dominate. Most people don't understand it. And when you understand it, you'll understand it by the time you get to the end of this webinar with us tonight. You will figure out exactly how you can just canvas, literally dominate a whole metro area for whatever niche that you want. And I can tell you this, I have looked at every niche that there is. I've been building GMBs in a lot of different niches for people and for myself too. And I can tell you there's not a single niche that I've seen that is already dominated. You would think that every niche would be dominated. Some of the most competitive niches, personal injury attorneys, water damage. Have you guys heard that these niches are very tough, right? I mean, think about it. Water damage, how many people try to rank for water damage because they can get leads, sell these leads for $100 or $200 or $300, right? There's people, I recognize some of the names that are actually on this webinar that have done GMBs the way I'm talking about, and they have got into the snack pack for water damage without even a website, without even reviews or citations, doing it this way that I'm going to show you in just a little bit. And that's, that's pretty incredible. I mean, you start getting leads for a few $100s a piece, it adds up. Now, that's not to say this doesn't work in other niches as well, because anything less competitive than, say, water damage or personal injury, it's a lot easier, obviously. You can rank in a lot bigger cities faster, okay? So, awesome. So let's just jump over to a call tracker here, the Jensen call tracker. So if you guys can see this date range right here, this is for the last 30 days, January 15th to February 15th. 350 calls, and you can see that the call volume here, it shows that it's up 54%. I don't know this call tracker that well, but I think that means it's up from the previous 30 days that much. So what you're looking at here is actually an HVAC campaign that we did, okay? Now, there's a lot of GMBs that were created for this. We did about 75 in December, okay? So this is not even 2 months old, all right? Now, there's not a website attached to this. Some of the listings do have reviews. There's no citations done yet. So when you look, and here's what I'm going to do. A bit later on, I'm going to tell people how they can get an actual walkthrough through these sites. So, I mean, obviously, right, this webinar, a lot of people are on here, and you guys, those of you that know me know I'm really giving. I like to share everything. But this is an actual client project. So I'm not going to show the domain here, but I will explain how you guys can get a walkthrough of that actual site. I will show you the business name, the actual GMBs. I'll walk you through everything, but just being this is public, I'm not going to put the client name out there. Anybody that trains with me, obviously, I'll show you my exact clients and exactly what I'm doing. I give out the domains, everything, okay? Which people are think I'm crazy for that, but I believe that whatever I put out comes back, and so as I help you, good comes back to me, and it's served me well so far. So 350 calls, just this month, and there's not even a website attached. I'm just finishing the site right now. I expect when we add the site to this, the calls will double, right? Because right now we're not getting any clicks over to a website. So if anyone's really analyzing or shopping, they're probably not going to call us because there's no website there. And a lot of these listings don't even have reviews. A few do, but it's probably half the listings don't even have reviews. So 350 phone calls for an HVAC business. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit how I actually name these listings because that is a secret, the naming and the location for getting them to rank. So I just want to show you one other project that's a little more established. All right, and that's this one here. This one here is an insulation website. You can see that This is absolutely crushing it as well. Now, you're going to see that the total calls the last 30 days was 900. Now, we could go through, and I'm sure there's some spam calls in here as well. There's got to be like, Yelp and Angie's List and Home Advisor and some of those folks calling, but it's not half the phone calls. Even if it were, 450 phone calls would be pretty impressive. Would you agree? For a lead generation installation website. Both of these websites are located in the same kind of metro area. It's about a 2 to 3 county area. Most of the business comes from one county, okay? But we have a couple other counties that have a few GMBs in them. Most of it is in one. So that first HVAC example I showed you, 75 GMBs. I've added a few since, so probably up to about 100. This insulation one has had about 50 GMBs. And in the last month, I've added a lot. I have actually added about 100 more GMBs. So you can see in the last month what's happened to the phone calls. I added a ton more GMBs, and the phone calls have, gone from, basically 500 to 900.
So on this, this is amazing. 900 calls in 1 month, 350 calls in 1 month. It's
kind of blown my mind too, really. Like I'm just kind of giddy with this whole thing because this is all, transpired kind of over the last year. And like, as we've perfected it more and dialed it in more, it's like, it's really cool because I'm just able to just turn phone calls on for anybody that wants phone calls, which is,
that's absolutely crazy. Now I got a question here. Someone just popped in. Actually, I got 2 questions if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Just get some water.
All right. How big of a radius would you need for 100 GMBs?
So great question. So what I look at is not so much the radius of like what you need. I look at more, you want to cover all the major search terms and you want to cover all the places that your market is located in, which kind of brings me into a point I was going to cover in a little bit. So let's just cover that right now. And that is, you want to locate, assuming you're going to do this for like service businesses, which is primarily what I do, roofing, HVAC, insulation, but it can be done for anything. I have people in my group and that have been using this method that I'm showing you to cover like every week. It's like somebody gives me a niche. It's like, hey, are you in like the cash for cars niche? Never even thought about that. Are you in the CBD niche? Are you in the this and the that? And it's like I've not seen it. Actually, I take it back. I'll explain this. I've seen one market that it hasn't worked in, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit, and we'll talk about why it hasn't worked. But that's like one of about 100. The rest have all worked really, really well. So the key here, though, is locating these GMBs in suburbs around a good-sized city. That's really the key. You want to be having GMBs where there is population. Because let's go back for a second. Let's go back to this whole idea that, Google kind of came out with their algorithm, which Google thought it was a great idea to say, you know what, we're going to cut the reach of GMBs way, way, way back. You can't just have a single GMB anymore and rank it for all of Los Angeles. Not fair. Think about this. Does it make more sense for Google financially to let one person with one GMB own the entire metro area with one listing? Or does it make more sense that they distribute it and let everybody have a little tiny piece of the puzzle, little tiny piece of the pie, and be unhappy with that little piece of the pie? Because now what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to use AdWords. They're going to have to buy ads if they want to be seen in more places than just their little neck of the woods. And so this was huge for Google. This adjustment ramped their ad revenue way up because all those people that were, I've seen this. I literally had clients coming to me saying, well, Matt, do you think we need to start doing some ads? A couple years back, they saw their reach drop too, which, didn't make me look very good because they just had their one GMB and, the reach was cut. So it's like, what do I do? The client's on me going, hey, Matt, we need more business. And so, they were considering doing AdWords. In some cases, they did AdWords because they wanted lead flow right away. That's what they had to do. Their one GMB just wasn't cutting it anymore. So the way you want to locate these is all around a metro where people are located. So let me give you guys a little a little really nice juicy tidbit. And you want to search best places to live in an area. So whatever metro area you're looking at putting GMBs in, you want to search in Google best places to live. And you're going to find this website, which is niche or niche.com, however you pronounce it. And this is a great little website. And what you want to do is you want to go through and just look here at some of the areas that they're giving you that are great places to live. Now, you may not want to do a GMB in every single one of these areas. That would probably be a little much unless you want to be aggressive. I do my stuff aggressive, so I'll show you how I map it out.
I mean, I was just getting ready to say that's actually not a bad idea, because what people need to understand, Matt, and I think this is what you're getting at here, you're definitely getting at this, is that the more areas, it's like fishing. The more hooks and lures you have in the pond, the more bites you're going to get. If you have one pole that you're putting all of your weight on, all of your hopes and dreams of getting that big marlin, you're going to have less chance of getting that marlin. But if you have more and more lines out there.
So I like to look at this at first, because this will show you basically what I would call suburbs, right? And DC, there's a lot of population there. So you're going to find that there's a lot of areas. Some of these are going to have pretty big population, which is fine. Like you said, more lines that you have in, the more fish you're going to catch. So let's do this as well. I'm going to pull up one more thing, and we're going to go Washington, DC, zip code map. All right. So let's do this. And I've not been on this website, but let's just see this. That's not really a zip code map. Okay, this is here. It looks like this should be fine. Yeah, this will work. It may not get to the other areas of DC, around DC, like Arlington and whatnot. Oh, come on, Quora. We don't want you got to sign in or something for that. Let me just find one here that looks good. Well, we can start with like this right here. But you guys can do this for your own particular market, right? It's just a rough example, but that's fine. So I like to combine these two things together, because for most businesses, and there's a few exceptions, but for most businesses, you want to be where the people are living, right? Unless you have like a B2B kind of thing where you're thinking, okay, most of my clients are going to be coming from like a downtown area or like a business district. If that's the case, you'd want to be having your GMB in downtown or in the business district. I mean, how many of you remember when everybody used to say, put your GMB in the city centroid, right? And most people just assumed that city centroid was like downtown, right? It's where like the center of city is. That used to work, right? But that is completely bye-bye now, because it's all about where people are searching from. So you want to be exactly where the people are at. So if we're talking a business, let's say like, give a good example, maybe like fencing, okay? If you're a fence contractor and you want to sell some really nice fencing, are you going to sell it in the more affluent areas or the lower end areas, right? Probably the more affluent areas. So part of this is you need to just think a little bit about your niche and think, where do you want to locate these for highest probability of success? You can put them everywhere and that'll work. You'll still get phone calls. But if you're going to be selling these to a business or getting paid for a lead or for a sale, they're going to be really happy clients if you're giving them the ideal jobs. So I like to just match that up with the niche. If it's a home service niche, I target the family areas and I target the higher end areas. If it's something that just appeals to everybody and it really doesn't matter in terms of if it's high end or larger homes or anything like that, you can just put them everywhere and cover the whole, just like you wouldn't exclude any areas. So I love this website, Best Places to Live, here on niche.com. And I would go put them in all of these. Arlington, North Bethesda, excuse my pronunciation because I've never been to these places. Garrett Park, North Potomac.
You totally got it. You got it.
I got it. Okay. Vienna, Kensington, Rockville. I've made GMBs in these places for people, but I've never been to these places. But in general, I would cover all these. A few of these that are really tiny that maybe only have like 4,000 population or something like that. You could, like this one, 3,000 people. If the niche really counts, then I would do it. Otherwise, if it's really close to another location, another one of these cities, you could probably lump it in with another one. But remember, you're only going to show up for about 5, maybe 10 miles if you're lucky. So you really need to cover the whole area to see, that domination effect. So a little trick as well that I use is I'll look at the zip code maps, and you'll see a lot of times. Let me just show it Orlando as an example, because I did this the other day for a client, and it was kind of nice because it overlaid like downtown, but it also overlaid like the other areas as well. So let me just see. I think maybe this will show it. Oh, this is so tiny. I don't know if it's really going to show it. No, it doesn't look like it's going to show it well. Let me just kind of walk you through kind of how you would do this. So you'd look at a map. You could take a little more time when you're doing this yourself, locating your GMBs. But you want to line up basically the map of the city with an overlay of the zip codes, all right? And when you do this, you're going to see that there's a few zip codes that are going to be in like the downtown area, and then you're going to have more zip codes that still count as far as like the city, but they're more on the outskirts. And then you start your suburbs, where if you actually were to Google that address, it would no longer show Orlando. It would show like Altamont Springs or Winter Park or Windermere or something like that, okay? So that's the key. If Google is also saying that this is a different area, like if they look at an address, and it's easy to just look at an address and see where it's at. But if you look at an address and it says Arlington instead of DC, you absolutely need a GMB there, because Google is not going to take your DC one and show it in Arlington, right? Unless your like niche is like underwater basket weaving or something that's so remote that there's nobody else there to pick from. Remember, they want to distribute it across everybody because they want to just give you a little taste of business, and then not enough. You need to buy ads. That's what they want you to do, okay? So that being said, I don't want to buy ads from Google, okay? If you guys buy ads from Google, that's fantastic, bless you. But I do not want to buy ads from Google, right? I would much rather own these GMB listings and have business coming in from across this whole metro area. So Michael, does that help in terms of how to locate them? Every market's a little bit different, but the best thing to do is look at the best places to live, okay? If it doesn't matter where they live, you can just look at it purely by population. And if you have a big city, right, where the actual city limits are quite large, then what you can do is you can do what I call a northeast-southwest orientation, meaning you would pick and locate, let's say, a GMB in the north part of Orlando. You'd locate one in the east part, the south, and the west. And that way you would actually have a few within Orlando city limits, and then you would cover all of the suburbs as well. In some cases, I don't do 4 right in the actual city if I know that it's more of a higher end service, or there's not a lot of homes right in downtown or right within city limits, right? So it depends on your niche. If it's just people that you're after, then you just want population, so you want to be everywhere.
Yeah, that's absolutely genius. That's genius. That's a great way of doing it. I think a lot of people that have gotten into GMBs, they've been told by other marketers, they've been told by other people that, hey, you know what, just buy one GMB from me for $5,000. No, back in the day probably, but right. Spend this amount of money, $200 or $300, and this will rank all over the place. And they don't realize that now they're realizing, because I'm seeing in chat, people are saying, oh, snap, I bought one GMB for $200 or $300, and now I'm thinking, wow, look what I can do.
I'm not getting the calls that I want.
Not getting the calls, yeah. Or you're having trouble ranking it because you're trying to rank it for such a big location. Whereas if you have 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 50, then they could be all over the place. So Michael Howard responded and said, thank you. That was a really great explanation. And he totally gets, he understands it. Now,
about, or I guess kind of brought up the point about just having a GMB and trying to rank it for a major city. And this is something that I feel a lot of people are misguided on. So I want to kind of give you a sort of an inside scoop as to how I look at these, because I think once you understand it this way, you're going to have an edge, and it's going to make a lot of sense for you. So think about this. How do most people do their their research in terms of where to, what to use for keywords and locations and all that, what do people use? A tool, right? Most of us use a tool. There's nothing wrong with tools. If you have a tool that you love, that's great. Keep using it. But I'm going to share with you a little different way of using any keyword research tools that you might be using that will explode your GMB results. Because what do most people do? They say, you know what, I want to rank for chiropractor. I want to rank this client or this lead gen site for chiropractor in Phoenix, right? So what do? They go and look at the search volume for Phoenix chiropractor. They get 1 GMB and they try to rank the site for Phoenix chiropractor. And it takes a while, right? Because you can't move too fast. You don't want to sandbox the sites. You're taking your time. And what happens is it really gets kind of demotivating. This is how I used to do things. It would be like 2 or 3 months in and it's like, oh man, the client's like on me. I'm not getting the phone calls. And you start getting hard on yourself because you thought you'd be able to generate results sooner and you haven't. So you start beating yourself up. And it's really, it's kind of frustrating. It's kind of unfortunate. And what I found is that there's kind of a flaw in how we've been taught to look at these keyword tools since proximity has become important. And that is, we're just looking at a search term thinking that that's where the volume is at. And really, with this proximity algorithm, the volume is not there, or the total volume of everybody looking for this business or this product or whatever it is you're wanting to rank is not just locked up in that keyword phrase. There may be people that are searching chiropractors, right? Or chiropractic near me, or chiropractors open now, or just chiropractor. And what are they doing? They're looking in the map results, and Google is showing them the chiropractors that are closest to them. So ranking your website for Chiropractor Phoenix or Phoenix Chiropractor is not going to get you the phone calls. I actually heard from somebody yesterday that said this. They said, Matt, I was kind of on to what you're talking about here with my GMBs. I started to realize that I needed more of them because I ranked a website #1 for a couple hundred searches a month, and I realized I wasn't getting any phone calls. I thought once I got #1, I'd get all these calls, and I didn't. So they realized that the calls are really coming from GMBs right now. And if you have a website that's existing, whether it's ranked top or not, when you add GMBs to it, it's like magic. Without, taking 3 hours to explain every little mechanic of this to you, I think most of you realize that real traffic coming into a website is really important, right? It definitely is something that Google's looking at. So imagine if you just have 1 GMB. Imagine if you had 5, 10, 20, 100 GMBs all bringing real traffic to your website. That right there can get you ranked, okay? But remember, my goal to start is not to rank the website. The key with fast results on this is GMBs first. You want to go ahead and get your GMBs up first because that can start bringing in phone calls. If he's not, maybe you can just explain what he shared with you a couple days ago, because he used this strategy and got GMBs, and he actually doesn't even have a website linked yet because he doesn't even have the logins. They just were finished being created, but he generated some pretty amazing results following this model. Again, not taking a website first and then trying to build that up and take time, but instead getting the GMBs first and seeing where the phone calls come in and then focusing efforts on the areas that are already working. I told you there was one example that this was one of the very largest cities in the country, okay, for pest control. And the listings, and now this guy, he's ordered for about 10 different niches. So he said 9 of the 10 are making him 10 times what he's spending on the GMBs. But this particular one didn't produce. And I want to explain this because I think it'll help you when you're locating and figuring out your GMBs, what is going to give you the highest probability of success. And what he did was he did pest control, but he did it right in this metro, one of the biggest cities of the country, and just targeted it right there. And, pest control is a competitive niche. So what he did was said, you know what, Matt, why don't we try animal removal instead? I said, wow, that's kind of interesting. Crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. So he's still sending the business to the same partner that he lined up, but it was just a little more niche down. And because it was such a large city, that worked, right? So if you're doing pest control and it's a very, very big city, think how you can niche it down a little more, because by niching it down, he hit the snack pack for every one of the areas within the first week without doing anything else. I know that sounds like a lot of hype, but it's naming it the right way. And I'm going to show you guys how to name these in a second, because naming it is about 75, 80% of getting into the snack pack right away. Okay. Because he didn't do citations. He doesn't even have any reviews going to them. You want to get reviews, but to start, you're not going to have any reviews on them. It's going to take a little time to put them on. So what he did was animal removal. And then now we're talking, okay, let's do it for bed bugs. Let's do it for termites, right? So it's a hot area. So both of those should work pretty well. So if it's a super competitive niche, think about how you can niche it down a little bit. And, if you have questions on this, I'm going to make myself available to you guys to make sure that you're successful with this. I've seen a lot of niches, so I can tell you what I've seen work. If it's a specific metro you're looking at, I've probably already worked in that metro, so I can give you some advice as to what areas.
Yeah, that's genius. Here's a question for you, and this is actually for me.
Sure.
I'm sure you've had people order 100 plus GMBs. For those,
the record so far is 1,000. So
okay, let's just
beats that, but yeah,
let's just take that crazy person. I love that person already. I don't know who they are, but
he started with like 100. He started with 100, and then was like, saw the 100 work, and then so he.
That's genius. That's great. Okay, let's say that he has 1,000 GMBs. Do you know how many phone calls he's getting on average? Just an estimation.
I don't know. This is a legal niche, so okay. I don't know. I can message him. You give me a second. Let me just keep going, Michael. But let me just shoot him a message.
Yeah, I'm just curious because you were showing these GMBs, people that set up your own right there, and you get 900 calls per month. I was thinking if you have 1,000 GMBs out there, especially in the legal niche, oh my gosh, do people have any idea how expensive those leads are? Those leads are super expensive for a legal niche.
Well, I think that's probably why is getting so many too, is because when you look at it and when you guys see the special offer that we do later, if it's something that you're jumping in on, you're going to see that it really I've set this up in a way to scale. Okay. So trying to just buy like a GMB or two, you're not going to get enough momentum, right? So I've set it up in a way where you can scale. And you'll see another on the page that Michael will show you later. There is a gentleman named Kyle, spelled with a C, C-Y-L-E. And Kyle also has got some stuff in the legal niche. This is not the one that I was telling you about, but somebody else that's in that niche in a different area. And you will see a couple screenshots that he has put. You'll see a few screenshots from people that are using this model on that page from their call logs. And what Kyle has done is really interesting. He, like Venu, had seen calls before there was even a website attached to it. And this is in some very, very specialized legal areas where the value of some of these leads is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not like $100 lead. So to get one lead like that in a single year is like, they'll invest marketing all year long to get one of those. And we got one of those in the first week. I think they've got 2 or 3 since, but he's had them up for like, a month and a half, 2 months. So what I discovered was if you just have a GMB or two, you don't get enough momentum. So we kind of talked about that earlier, but you're not going to generate enough calls in order to, number one, impress the lead partner that you're selling to or the client that you're working with. But number two, it's hard to keep going with something, right, for a lot of people unless they're seeing some kind of result. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm not going to slog at something for months and months and months. I've not even seen a glimmer of result or gotten a little payback, right? Made some money off of it in order to want to continue with it. So I'm in the position from my agency and my lead gen sites and my investments to be able to shell out the money to create these for you and let you pay me back for them over time after you've already ranked them and are making money, which Nobody else will do this, all right? I've had other people that sell GMBs for a couple $100 message me and they think I'm crazy because they're like, well, what if this? What if this? I'm like, I'm not worried about that. I have an abundance mindset, okay? And so I believe, this is what I believe. I believe if you see results with this, okay, number one, you're going to want to continue paying. Number two, you'll probably want to do more with Michael and I, right? Because you're going to say, look, this is working so well. What else do you have? How do I take this further, right? And there's other cool things that you can take this further with. So the way I look at this is I want to help each of you get that success, whether it's a first success or whether you're already established and cranking and you just want to double your phone calls. That's fine with me too. So this is how it works. You tell us the niche that you want. You're going to pick the business name, which we'll go over how to create that in a second. You're going to set up a phone number, which we can talk a little bit about how you do call tracking, but any phone number call tracking system will work fine, but you need a phone number for the listing because you're going to have to forward it to somebody, right? So you need to get a phone number for the listing. So business name, phone number, and area will help you find the addresses, and you need obviously the category that it's in. Once you give this to us, we will go create those listings for you, whether it's 10 or 20 or 50, whatever it is. We're going to create the listings for you. And then after the listings are live, we're going to show you that they're live. You'll be able to see them. You will then just pay back per GMB for 10 months. Okay, so I'm going to finance you over 10 months for them. After the 10 months, you own the GMBs 100%. Okay, so let me explain the mechanics of how this works. We use a new Gmail account for every single GMB that we make. Okay, we have those Gmail accounts. Immediately, once we get these live and your payment is set up, we go ahead and we assign you access, manager access to all the GMBs. So you have full dashboard access. You can go in right away and add photos if you want. You can add services. You can optimize them. You can do everything. Then after those 10 months, you don't owe me anything after that. It's entirely yours. So what we do then is at the end of the 10 months, then I just give you the Gmail account. So at that point, it's totally yours. I mean, like, you can change the login, do whatever you want. And people ask me, they say, well, Matt, like, aren't you concerned about somebody like, you know, getting these suspended, or what if they over-optimize it or something? Well, number one, I'm going to give you exactly what I do, my guidelines for optimizing these so you have the best possible way working for you out of the gate. Now, that being said, if you decide not to listen to me and you decide to do something wacky and your GMB goes down, well, I'm a pretty nice guy. My policy is this. If your GMB goes down or all your GMBs go down, what happens then, right? Oh my gosh, I lost the GMB. Then as long as we can replace it, right, we will replace it for you. If we can't replace it, then you're not going to pay, okay? So that's, again, nobody's going to make that offer. Most people build you a GMB, and if it gets, penalized or suspended 30 days later, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, guess what? They go, well, too bad. You over-optimized it, and, that's not my fault. So, again, I look at everything I do as long-term, okay? Because to me, that's all there is, right? That's all there is. The best businesses in the world have people that continue to stay with them for life. Products that you love and you continue to buy. A store that you love to shop at. Maybe a place you get your groceries at. You just continue to go there because you like the experience, or it's your place, right? Or a restaurant that you just always go to. I look at this as the same way. Like, I have to make sure that you're successful with this, or you'll go, I'm never buying anything from that guy again, right? So people love that we made this offer because it's just made it so easy to scale per month, per GMB for 10 months. After that, you own them 100%. So naming, and then we'll go to that. So I want to walk you guys through how I name these because that's really important. If you don't name them right, they're not going to rank well. So the key is you need to get the keyword, your main keyword, and location into the business name. Now, some people might think, well, Matt, isn't that like really spammy? This is how I do it and make it not look spammy in order to work. So let's just say, for instance, this is an HVAC business. Okay, so let's say the main keyword is like HVAC, or it could be heating, it could be air conditioning, whatever you're going to target. Okay, so what you can do is you can add a short word or like an abbreviation to the keyword. Okay, so let me just give you like an example as to how this would work. So I could say something like VP Oh, Patrick says he's getting, oh, see if he can get me. He doesn't have exact stats. He just says, I'm getting stuff every single week. Well, we need to know exact stats. But VP HVAC of, and then this is where you would fill in the suburb, okay, or the city that you're targeting. So I could say VP HVAC of Bethesda, okay, or VP HVAC heating and air of Bethesda. Okay, so why do I, and you don't have to name yours this way. People will name them a lot of different ways. But I will tell you this, when you have the keywords in your business name, it dramatically helps your rankings when these go live. So as soon as your GMBs go live, it's going to take about a day or two for it to kind of get into Google's system and basically populate into the results. And that's where you're going to see where it hits in the map listings, where it starts at, right?
And real quick, if I could just interrupt, someone's just asking, what does VP mean? Is that just the name of the business that you just created?
It's just something I just made up.
Okay,
yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I do actually have a particular brand that's kind of similar to this. But yeah, VP could just be anything. So my point here is you don't have to have the exact match keyword for your business name for this to work. Okay. If you do, that's fine. It will work. But I a lot of times like to add another word to it because I don't want to tip off other SEOs as to what I'm doing. Okay. You guys are lucky. I'm teaching this stuff outside. This is the first webinar that I've done breaking down every little piece of this. Okay. So I don't, won't teach this stuff everywhere. So the key is you want to kind of hide in plain sight. Okay. Don't tell everybody else what you're doing and let them not realize that you exist and that you're, getting all these phone calls. I mean, nobody knows that I'm pulling 900 installation phone calls in a month from one little county or two little counties in New York State. Okay. So they don't need to, right? So my key with this here is you need to get the keywords and the location into each GMB. So think of it almost like a franchise. So if I was targeting that DC area that Michael brought up, I would do VP HVAC heating and air of Arlington. Okay. And I'm just going to repeat this for every suburb that's around DC area, because what's going to happen now is somebody's going to be sitting at home in Bethesda, Maryland. And what they're going to do is they might not type in HVAC contractor or heating repair or whatever in Bethesda. They might just say HVAC companies near me. And Google's going to look at where they're searching from and they're going to go, you're right here in this little area of Bethesda, and wham, it's going to pop into, my GMB is going to pop into the map pack there. So let me show you. You mentioned mesothelioma attorney. I don't know why Google is thinking that, I'm in Chicago here, but look at this as an example. It doesn't matter what the area is. You have an attorney here that's ranking with no reviews. Mesothelioma attorney. Any of you could actually go out and pick mesothelioma attorney in a metro. I mean, it's showing Chicago. I don't know why it's showing me Chicago, but do this from your own area and you'll be able to see. My guess is that you are not going to see the 3-pack dominated by people with keywords in the name. Now look you got one person here. This might be somebody that, knows what's going on, because look they don't even have a website attached. They don't even have a website attached, right? They're just funneling calls to somebody. Okay. Don't even have reviews, but they're there. So that's how you take advantage of this. I don't know who this particular person is, but I guarantee if you were to search mesothelioma attorney, not necessarily right in Chicago downtown, but if you're in a suburb, okay, again, which is where people a lot of times live, is not just downtown, they live around a city, and you search, I would highly guess that you're going to find not just one suburb, but you're going to find many suburbs where this map pack has had very weak competitors. No keywords in the name, no reviews, and in some cases, no website. So if you got keywords in the name, if you later added a website, you don't have to have a website right away, but you could later add a website as you start, bringing calls in. You want to, take your time to build a website. You can. That HVAC example does not have a website linked at all to any of those listings. It is completely barren. The installation site is much more built out. That does have location landing pages, and they're all tied to the GMBs. So you will get better results, obviously, as you add a website. That takes time to get a website up usually for people and getting those city pages built out and stuff. So start with just the GMBs. Get the calls coming in, and then you can invest your energy into the ones that are producing. Okay, so that is how I suggest naming. I call it the franchise model, and you can just either add of after it, right? Or you can add, you can just even say, like this. You can put a dash and the city name. But you really want to work the keywords in. You also want to work that location that's going to help you get in that snack pack right away versus picking something that's just branded here like Cooney and Conway. I mean, you could do Cooney and Conway with the city name. That will help a little bit, but it's not going to work as well as having even just part of one of your keywords in the business name. That helps a lot.
What do you need a separate phone number and separate website for every GMB?
So I would suggest getting a separate phone number for each one. I would not say that you need a website because in the case of the HVAC example, I'm just about finished with the website and all the city pages, and it's not even attached. So we got 400 some calls, and it didn't even have a website. I would suggest for longevity, though, that you do put together a site. You don't need it right away, I would suggest that you don't do a separate website for every single listing. That's a lot of effort. The way I like to do it is this multi-location way or franchise model way, where I would go do 10 or 20, let's say, for this HVAC business all around DC, and I would have one website called just VP HVAC, heating and air, and then I would eventually build out city pages, just little location landing pages for each area, Bethesda, Arlington, and on each of those, then you can optimize those pages. And that's something that I'm going to do for everyone that's getting in on this offer is I will record some extra videos for you guys all on how you would set up those pages and even what you would do to optimize each of these listings. Because again, I need you to have success with these or you're not going to want to get more, right? I need you to see results with whatever amount that you're getting. So then you go, oh man, you're like the guy that's ordered 10 times from me, right? Or the guy that went from 100 to 1,000. Like that's what I want for all of you. You need to be making money with these so you scale. So you don't need a separate website for all of them. You don't even need a website right away. But once you get some calls coming in, what you're going to want to do is see where those calls are coming in from. That's why it's important to have a different phone number on each one. If you don't know where the calls are coming in from. You might have two GMBs that are producing a ton of phone calls for you. And you might find, like I found it with my own, I had some GMBs that I put up in North Carolina for a particular project, and we were getting phone calls, and I was like, where are these coming from? It turns out we were actually ranking not just in the area that I targeted for the suburb, but a little area outside of that, and that's where a lot of the calls were coming from. And I had no reviews on this listing. I'd done no citations, and it was still getting calls. Amazing, right? Like you would think that it wouldn't get calls, but like Vanu, he got a call and there's no reviews on the listings, right? There's no citations. There's no website because he just as of this morning now has ownership of them. So
yeah, of those particular ones.
Yeah. And and there's only just, a handful of GMBs. So, I mean, when you look at it, you don't have to have all that stuff in place. But what I would suggest is as you see where the results are coming in from, it's 80-20. You focus your efforts on those. If they don't have any reviews on them, get a review or two on them. If if you find that you're number 3 in the snack pack, maybe not number 1, do some citations to push that up. I'll show you everything that I do to push these up. But Michael with, his tools as well showed me some amazing results pushing from like 3 or 4 in snack pack to number 1 or 2. So I think what you're going to want to do is use Michael's tools in order to help push you up for those listings where you're sitting maybe at number 2, 3, or 4, and you need a little push up. You may not need to do a full thing of citations. If it's a larger city and you're further down, you might want to do citations. But at bare minimum, you need to make sure that you have at least 1 review on each of your listings because it's going to help your conversions. You will still get calls without it, but it's a lot less than if you actually have reviews. Because, I mean, me personally, I don't call any bit. Like if I'm looking for a business locally, I don't call anybody that doesn't have reviews. And I think a lot of you would probably attest to that too. Like you're going to call somebody that's got, right? Like, are you going to call this guy? You going to call this guy? No, you're probably going to call this one, or you maybe will search and find some more people. But you're more likely to call somebody that's got reviews and positive reviews than you are without. So I've gotten thousands of phone calls from GMBs that don't have reviews, but I've gotten a lot more phone calls from GMBs that have reviews. So just get yourself a review. Careful where you get reviews from. I will give you guys advice on where to get those from, but you don't want to just get any old review, because if it's not sticking, that's a problem. I take a little bit of my profits from the calls and I invest them back into the site, into citations and really good relevant links. So my sites then rank organically, and you can see what happens. The installation site now gets a lot more phone calls because it's established. And should I lose those GMBs, I still have all the organic rankings. I could rent that out to a local business. I could take their map listing, tie it to my site. They would now be in the maps. I wouldn't have to worry, right, ever about that map listing, because it's, it's a local partner. It's their actual physical place. So that is kind of your fallback, if you will, is should Google ever change how this works, right? Or you get a jealous competitor or something and, you lose a map listing, then that's a way to future-proof that. Now, remember, if you do lose a listing, okay, I'm going to do my best to replace it for you. If for some reason I can't, right, I've only had a few go down. I've been able to replace every one of them. It's been less than 1% of all of them that we created. But let's say some go down. I'll work to replace them for you. If I can't, then you're not going to pay, okay? So that's what makes this really attractive, right, Michael? Because
buy a
GMB outright, guess what? There's no skin in that game for that guy anymore. You paid him $100 or $200 for this GMB, and you've given him your money, and guess what? He's moved on to something else. He's not incentivized to fix your GMB or make you another one, because that's taking time away from his other orders. But see, in our case, we're going to be in the hole, right? Because obviously there's cost to move a profit, but there's cost to us doing this. So, if you have a listing that were to have some kind of an issue or it wasn't working for you, I have to replace it for you. I have to make things right with you, because you wouldn't continue to pay, right? And that would mean that I would end up losing money on it. So I'm playing the long game. I'm making sure that these are going to work for you long-term, because that's the only way that I'm actually going to make something out of it, and that you're going to continue to want to, work with me and learn from me. So it's a pretty unheard of offer, and it's a 10-month term. So as soon as your 10 months is up there, then no more payments. You're done. You can usually, what most people do that I've seen is a couple months in, they got their stuff, really working. And so they go, wow, I'm already making more money from the calls than I'm paying you for the GMBs. So they go grab another 10. Then they go get those ones sold, and they go grab another 10. So I say about 40-some%, I have to look at what it is now, but it's over 40% of people have come back and ordered more batches of GMBs. The record so far is like 10 batches, because it's working for them. So
yeah, I mean, he kept expanding. So
right.
I did make
10 or 20 at a time. Yeah. So what I do with the zip code map is more so for setting your service areas inside of your GMB. I guess I forgot to touch on that. So when you get your GMB, or when you get, let's say, 10 GMBs delivered to you, each one is its own thing. So you can have a different service area, and you should for each one, because you don't want these, unless you're doing the multiple brand strategy later on as you get more advanced. You want these to, think of it almost like a franchise. This one's got a territory, this one's got a territory, and we butt up to each other here, but this one's this territory and this one's this territory. So I like looking at the zip code maps to kind of figure out, if I'm going to do, one in North Orlando, one in the East, South, and the West, which zip codes all apply to their service areas. Because you're not going to just say that the one in the North serves all of Orlando, because it's not going to show there anyway. Google's only going to show it for 5 miles. So I want to just take these northern zip codes and put them as the service area for the one that's Orlando North. The ones that are in the East area, I'm going to take, these 6, 8 zip codes, whatever that is, and I'm going to put those in the East one. Same with the South, same with the West. I'm going to kind of carve up the city that way. That's if I'm locating them just within the actual city. If I'm doing suburbs, the same principle applies. It's just that suburbs typically will have like a zip code just for that suburb. So it's a little easier to carve that up. You don't necessarily have to say, I only serve 32754. You can just say, hey, I'm only, serving, Winter Park or whatever that suburb name is. So does that make sense? It helps you to carve up a specific city if you're going to have multiple listings within just the city itself.